Since it was formally invented in 1863 England, soccer, or football, is arguably the universal sport. Soccer has paused wars, like it did during the 1914 Christmas truce, as well as began wars, like it did during the 100-Hour War. The soccer industry is worth billions of dollars, is the maker of fame and fortunes, and attracts billions of spectators worldwide. Perhaps this is why hosting the World Cup, the international tournament that determines which country is the world champion of soccer, is such a big deal. The most recent World Cup, hosted in 2022 by Qatar, was watched globally by over 1 billion people. Argentina ended up winning the tournament, which brought the country to 3 total World Cup wins. But the World Cup garnered controversy as Qatar had long been accused of human rights abuses against migrant laborers. Still, this is not the first time that a host nation has been accused of major human rights abuses during their time as a World Cup host. This happened in 1978 as well, and interestingly, Argentina won that one too. In 1978, Argentina hosted the World Cup. The final match, which was played between Argentina and the Netherlands, took place in Buenos Aires at a stadium called El Monumental. Plenty of world leaders were in attendance, including Argentina's President Rafael Videla and his top military leaders. The United States' Henry Kissinger, then serving as Secretary of State, was in attendance as well. Roughly 1 billion people watched the match worldwide. In terms of actual entertainment, the New York Times complained that the game was pretty lackluster. The match, they said, would be remembered for atrocious refereeing, rugby-like tackles, and faked injuries that bled into overtime. In the end, Argentina eventually emerged victorious, beating the Dutch 3-1. The New York Times said that this would be the most notable aspect of the 1978 World Cup, that it was won by the hosting nation. History, however, will note the 1978 World Cup as yet another tragic layer to the Argentine Dirty War. But let's go back. On March 24, 1976, Admiral Videla successfully organized a coup and usurped Isabel Perón as the president of Argentina. Argentines were initially happy when Videla took power. The country had a long history of military intervention, and at this point, military rule was viewed as a legitimate governance system when democracy faltered. The people hoped that Videla would put an end to terrorist attacks plaguing the country. But during Videla's process of national reorganization, it became evident that his definition of terrorism was unique. Terrorist came to define any communist Argentine, or really anyone with left values. Then, terrorists described anyone who was related to someone with the left values. Soon, it described essentially any Argentine, including children and the elderly. Accused individuals may be arrested at their home or literally picked off the street by members of the Argentine military. Families were generally not notified that their loved ones were taken. As such, the kidnapped people were dubbed Los Desaparecidos, the disappeared. Once arrested, the desaparecidos were taken to one of a series of detainment centers. These could be anywhere from their own homes to one of 5 main prison camps: La Perla, Campo de Mayo, Club Atletico, Vesubio, or the Navy Mechanics School. Argentines in these camps would suffer through grueling mental, physical, and sexual torture. Each of the 5 main camps had their own unique methods, but electrocution was a common favorite. All 5 of the main camps kept their desaparecidos locked in dark cells. Rarely, prisoners were eventually released. More likely, they were murdered by the state. They had not been told that their loved ones were arrested. The families of disappeared were certainly not told that they had been killed. Bodies were dumped in the ocean, disintegrated, burned, or buried in unmarked mass graves. The Argentine military typically did not keep records of these burials or chose to destroy the ones that they did have. The Argentine media was barred from reporting on the desaparecidos and the military's activities. In such a way, Argentina's disappeared were literally erased from the history book. The big power in Argentina's region was the United States of America. Publicly, the United States condemned Videla's actions, but privately the higher-ups in Washington felt differently. As long as the Videla government was undermining communism, the United States only requested that Videla get his national process of reorganization over with quickly and promised Uncle Sam's support. So now we're in 1978 again. As they are tortured, desaparecidos can literally hear the cheers of the stadium crowds from their cells. Human rights groups try to bring attention to the genocide down the street, but once Argentina won the World Cup, the desaparecidos remain largely forgotten. The Dirty War finally came to an end in 1983, soon after Argentina's defeat in the Falkland War. Videla was ousted from power. Out of nowhere, a 45-minute news report appeared on the TV and informed the Argentine people that any missing persons could be presumed dead. Even then, the television peddled the idea that the desaparecidos were terrorists, and military members still in the government quickly passed the Law of National Pacification, which claimed that there was no detention centers and preemptively pardoned military members of any wrongdoing during the Dirty War. The new Argentine president, a man named Raúl Alfonsín, had other plans. He helped create the National Commission of Disappeared Persons, who published the Nunca Más, a report which exposed the government's role in the disappearances. Very soon, members of the military began to be put on trial. These men expressed a genuine, deep-seated belief that the desaparecidos were indeed terrorists. As for the torture, the military men said that they were just following orders. Refusal to do so would see them and their families joining the very desaparecidos they tortured. Videla, by then nicknamed the Hitler of the Pampa, was sentenced to life in prison, but many of his top officials were given lighter sentences. In 1986, the Argentine courts refused to take more cases related to the Dirty War when the law of full stop was introduced. Argentines responded by introducing a workaround, the truth trials, which allowed the people to keep on filing against military members. But in 1987, the law of due obedience saw all lower-ranked military members pardoned for their part in the torture and murder of desaparecidos. Economic woes saw Alfonsín ousted from power, and his successor, Carlos Menem, even began pardoning convicted military members for their part in the Dirty War, allowing these men to rejoin Argentine society. Both the law of full stop and the law of due obedience remained a part of Argentine law until 2003 and 2006, respectively. Today, Argentina still keeps many of the details of the Dirty War a secret, even despite a 2009 ruling in the Argentine Supreme Court which officially classified the Dirty War as a genocide. In fact, genocide denialism is on the rise in Argentina. Now the global community approaches the 2026 World Cup, to be jointly hosted by Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The USA will host the final match. None of these three countries find themselves in a situation like Argentina's, but like Qatar before them, all three of these countries have received criticism in recent years over their handling of human rights. Nobody wants another Argentina. Although FIFA, the organization that organizes the World Cup, has requirements for hosting, clearly not enough is being done to protect the victims of oppressive governments. As soccer fans, we must take the story of the disappeared and work together to create a safe, ethical, and clean game for all countries involved. That is the ultimate goal.